Sometimes I need to adjust the colors or the contrast within a photograph that I have. In this case, I've got an image that's black and white, but it's mostly just black with shades of gray. What I need to have is a lot more contrast between the lights and darks of it. The first thing I would do is go to Image, down to Adjustments, and adjust the levels of this photograph. This will bring up our Levels dialog box, and you can see a histogram ranging the darker areas and the lighter areas. If I was to click on any one of these little arrows at the bottom side of the histogram, I can adjust the dark point, bringing it in, and also the light point, making it lighter. In general, you want your darkest point to be at the start of this mountain range and the lightest point to be at the end of the mountain range. You can then refine the middle tones, the grayscale, right here in the center, and every image is going to be a little bit different. If I say OK, you can see this gives me a much more contrasting. Here it was before, here it was after. There are some advanced tools that you can work with in order to spot touch up the photograph. Now, we did learn about using the patch tool and the healing brush tool to fix some of these spots, but what happens if I wanted to, say, lighten or darken specific areas of their face? To do this, we're going to use these set of tools, the Dodge and the Burn tool. Dodging tools allow you to lighten an area, burn tools allow you to darken an area. The Smudge tool allows you to saturate and desaturate a color area of a photograph. Since there's no color, we're not going to use the Smudge tool. Let's use the Dodge tool to lighten their face. It works just like any type of brush, so I can adjust the size and hardness of it, but also pay attention to the range and the exposure. Adjusting the shadows, midtones, or highlights will allow me to affect only that particular area of a photograph, and the exposure is the amount of change that I want it to be. The higher the exposure, the quicker rate of change. So usually I keep this about a mid-tone exposure. Since I've got my Dodge tool, I can click on an area of her face, and you can see that lightens up that particular area. Same way for him. So if I needed his face to show up, that looks pretty good. Pay attention, however, if you do it too much, an area can quickly become very, very blown out. So you may want to adjust your exposure to be a lot less, and so it'll give you a little bit more control over the area that you're working with, or adjust the range. If I only want to lighten up the shadows, this will give me my darker area, and it won't affect the lighter areas. By contrast, if I change to the Burn tool, this will allow me to darken in an area. Let's make our brush a little bit smaller. That'll work. It too has a range and exposure to deal with. Let's bring it up a little bit. And with my Burn tool, I'm able to darken in an area. You can see by clicking and dragging on this, the shadows get much, much darker. As with all of the photo retouching tools, this is more of an art than a science, so playing around and being able to add lighter and darker areas will be different for every photograph that you work with. The final set of touch-up tools are your sharpening and blurring tools. You don't use this too much, but if I needed to blur a specific area, I can use the blur tool, change the size of the brush, and also the strength of the blur that I'm working with. So if I needed to, say, blur out her eye, click and drag, you can see the longer I hold on it, the more blurry it becomes. By contrast, the Sharpen will sharpen an area, making it more contrasting. And the Smudge tool will allow you to smudge out an area. In general, I don't use this tool too much, but sometimes it does come in handy.